What would you do if a lazy, manipulative coworker not only made you do all the work but then lied to your boss and accused you of being the lazy one? In today's story, my choice was a masterclass in Christmas karma. And it all started when I took what I thought was the perfect job. A few years back, I moved into a house with some of my best friends. It felt like the perfect setup. One of those friends, let's call her Chloe, got me a job with her at a local gas station. It was within walking distance of our new place. And I figured it would be one of the easiest gigs I'd ever had. Living with friends. A short walk to work, what could go wrong? The answer to that question was my coworker, Brenda. I was assigned to the night shift, which was usually pretty quiet customer-wise. Because of that, the bulk of the store's deep cleaning and restocking fell on the two-person night crew. Our list of duties was long. We had to ensure there was always fresh coffee, sweep and mop the entire store, keep all the merchandise neatly faced and organized, take out the trash from inside and outside by the pumps, sweep the parking lot, and the biggest task of all, stocking the beverage coolers. This last one was the most dreaded. It meant spending 2 hours or more inside a walk-in fridge where the temperature was kept below 40 degrees. With most of my coworkers, we had a good system. We'd split the work evenly. One of us would bundle up in a coat and gloves to tackle the cooler for a couple of hours, while the other handled the register, made coffee, and cleaned the store. Or sometimes one person would just handle all the customer transactions for the whole night while the other focused on getting all the side work done. It was a team effort. But not with Brenda. When I worked with Brenda, the team ceased to exist. She would disappear for hours at a time, hiding in the manager's office in the back. Or she'd plant herself behind the register, claiming she was doing inventory of the cigarettes. This was her excuse to make the other person, usually me, do every single task inside and outside the store. And even though she was standing right there at the register, she couldn't be bothered to even look up at customers, let alone ring them up. I'd have to stop what I was doing, run to the front, and handle the transaction while she meticulously counted. My friend Chloe, who worked first shifts, later told me that Brenda wasn't even really doing inventory. The manager and the morning crew handled all of that. She was just using it as an excuse to do nothing. Her work ethic was non-existent outside of our shifts. 2. If someone called off, the standard procedure was to call other employees to see if anyone could cover. Most people, if they couldn't make it, would give a valid reason like family plans or no childcare. Not Brenda. She would just answer the phone with a flat no and hang up. The real turning point came a few months into the job. Chloe came to me, looking worried. She told me our manager had pulled her aside to say that Brenda had been complaining that I don't do anything during my shifts with her. I was floored, utterly enraged. I was doing literally all of the work while she sat on her behind in the office or propped herself up on the counter. And she had the audacity to claim I was the one not working? This was the moment everything changed. Brenda, in her arrogance, had just made a fatal miscalculation. She thought she was cementing her power by undermining me. But all she did was light a fuse on a powder keg of resentment, setting in motion her own spectacular downfall. That was it for me. I was done with that place and immediately started looking for another job. You see, Brenda fancied herself the store's second in command, right under the manager. The thing is, our gas station chain didn't even have assistant managers. There was one manager and a few shift leads. But being a lead didn't come with any real power. It just meant a few extra tasks like ordering and inventory. Brenda wasn't even an official shift lead. But she acted like she was. Supposedly undergoing training for the position. She would walk around with a clipboard, making notes about things that could be improved. One of her brilliant improvements was a new rule that every employee, on every shift, had to spend 1 hour stocking the freezing cold cooler. Her reasoning was that it wasn't fair for the night shift to do it all. The irony was staggering. She would constantly hound my coworkers about this new rule. Yet in all the time I worked there, I never once saw her step foot in that cooler herself. Another of her power plays was instituting mandatory weekly team meetings. She claimed she read in a training manual that it was company policy. Even though no one, including our manager, had ever heard of it. These meetings were universally hated. No one wanted to come in on their day off for 20 minutes of pay to listen to Brenda go over her clipboard of useless observations. It made you wonder what was really going on with her and the manager. In fact, some of us even speculated if the two of them were hooking up. It seemed like the only logical explanation for why he'd let someone who did absolutely nothing keep their job and implement these ridiculous rules. I managed to miss the one meeting scheduled during my remaining time there, claiming I had a doctor's appointment when I was actually at a job interview. A few days later, I got the call. I'd passed the background check and was officially offered the new position. That night at the gas station, I asked my shift lead how to submit my 2 weeks' notice. She just smiled and asked, "Who were you working with on your last day?" I told her it was Brenda. She then asked if I officially had the new job locked down. And I confirmed I did. A sly grin spread across her face. "Do you really want to put in your 2 weeks' notice?" she asked. I immediately understood her meaning and dropped the subject. On the shift before my last day, I did something small and petty. I took Brenda's precious clipboard and placed it on top of a tall cabinet in the manager's office. I'm tall, so for me, it was easy to see and reach. For the much shorter Brenda, it would be completely out of sight. I thought it would just throw her off for a few minutes and then forgot I'd even done it. I had no idea that this simple act of hiding a clipboard would become the final, humiliating nail in the coffin of her tiny reign of terror. My final day of work was Christmas Day. I was scheduled for a split shift, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'd work with my best friend, Chloe. Then she'd leave, and Brenda would arrive to work her usual 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift with me. Chloe and I came in and worked like normal, having a good time despite being swamped. Since almost nothing else was open on Christmas, we were one of the busiest places in town. At exactly 10 p.m., Chloe clocked out. A few minutes later, the door chimed and in walked Brenda. A few minutes late as usual. She strolled in, probably expecting me to be in the middle of some miserable cleaning task. I walked out from behind the register, approached her directly, and with the biggest, most sincere smile I could muster, I said, "Merry Christmas." I quit. I then started to walk around her to leave. She just stood there in the doorway, her face a perfect mask of disbelief. I could see her brain trying to process what I'd said. The smug confidence she'd walked in with had evaporated, replaced by pure shock. Finally, her mouth opened and she stammered, "You're kidding, right?" I let out a laugh. It wouldn't be a Merry Christmas for me if I was kidding, I told her. And then I walked out the door, leaving her completely alone to run a packed store on one of the busiest nights of the year. I know what you might be thinking, why go in at all? But I had to sacrifice the end of my own family festivities on Christmas Day. A 3-hour shift when you plan to quit anyway is hardly worth it for the pay. But it was absolutely worth it to see the look on her face when I walked out and left her to actually do the job she normally pushed on to others. Looking back, quitting on the busiest day of the year was a stroke of genius. Chloe filled me in on the aftermath later. Brenda, in a total panic, went through the entire employee phone list, trying to get someone to come in and cover for me. One by one, every single person she called gave her the same response she always gave them, a simple, flat no, followed by a click as they hung up the phone. She was left to run the entire chaotic store by herself for a long time before the manager finally had to come in and help her. But the best part was the clipboard. At the very next team meeting she tried to hold, she couldn't find her notes. According to Chloe, she had a complete meltdown right there in front of all the other employees. And as she was frantically searching and having a fit, they all just stood there, silently looking up at the clipboard, sitting plainly on top of the cabinet where I had left it. She couldn't see it, but they all could. And not a single one of them felt the need to point it out to her. She eventually had to cancel the meeting because she couldn't find her notes. And they all got to go home. The mandatory meeting stopped for good shortly after that. And before you feel sorry for the manager having his Christmas interrupted, remember this: he had access to security cameras covering every inch of that store. He could have easily verified who was actually working and who was lying. Instead, he chose to take the word of one lazy person and insult my work ethic to my best friend. So, truth be told, I'm glad he got caught up in my revenge. I couldn't have planned it any better. Even now, years later, I still smile every time I think of that Christmas. This whole experience taught me a valuable lesson: in any workplace, you can't let laziness and manipulation go unchecked. Sometimes, the most professional thing you can do is to walk away. But doing it in a way that serves a cold dish of karmic justice is so much sweeter. So, I have to ask, have you ever had a coworker who got exactly what they deserved? Let me know your story in the comments below.